AI is accelerating across the public sector and is forcing new infrastructure decisions. Some workloads are staying on premises. Compliance matters more than ever, and rack and power modernization is moving to the center of the strategy. For partners, that creates real opportunity. Joining me to break this down are Niki Pettis and Adam Compton from Schneider Electric. Niki, Adam, it's great to have you both here.
Great to be here.
Let's get into it. Niki, from where you sit, what is really driving these modernization conversations right now in public sector?
Well, there are really three major forces driving modernization across federal and public sector, and they're all converging at the same time. First, the policy environment is accelerating modernization at an unprecedented speed. At the federal level, we've seen more than 90 specific policy actions laid out in the administration's National AI Plan. These actions are centered around economic competitiveness, national security, and global technological leadership. A major theme is deregulation. The administration has rolled back earlier AI rules, it's pursued a single federal framework, and even moved to preempt state-driven regulations to remove friction in adoption. This matters because it sends a message that modernization isn't optional or exploratory. The federal government is structurally clearing the runway for rapid AI integration. Second, we're in the middle of a national compute and infrastructure build-out. Permitting for high-power data centers and semiconductor fabs is being fast-tracked, cutting timelines that used to take years. Combine that with the billions in private investment in AI-ready infrastructure, and it's clear modernization isn't being driven by IT refresh cycles alone anymore. It's being driven by national infrastructure strategy too. This shift elevates modernization from a technology upgrade to economic and national security priority. Lastly, state and local government is experiencing a priority shift unlike anything we've seen in a decade, and that includes K-12 and higher education too. A recent study of state CIOs shows cybersecurity dropping from number 1 to number 2 in terms of priorities for the first time in 12 years. That AI adoption now takes the top spot. That's a seismic signal. State CIOs are effectively saying, we cannot secure, modernize, or serve at scale without AI. This shift really reflects the realities they're facing around workforce shortages, rising expectations for digital services, tight budgets, and fragmented legacy systems. In higher education, institutions are also under pressure to modernize research environments and elevate that digital student experience. So AI isn't just another tool, it's how they're closing capability gaps and serving their communities with more speed, more equity, and more reliability. So in summary, it's a combination of those things, right? Policy, infrastructure, and new priorities, all converging to make AI the centerpiece of how federal and public sector organizations will operate in the years ahead.
With the push toward modernization, how are you seeing the balance shift between AI training and inference workloads?
Yeah, good question. So consider that by 2030, inference will surpass training to become the dominant workload in AI data centers, representing more than half of all AI compute and roughly 30 to 40% of total data center demand. And we believe that 2026 will represent the start of the shift towards more inference as use cases get deployed and agentic AI develops. We're also seeing this dynamic play out in higher education, especially in high-performance computing environments that have traditionally centered on modeling and simulation workloads. Those HPC clusters are now absorbing much larger AI training workloads and seeing inference pushed out to departments and labs. That means that universities are having to rethink not just how much heavy training they centralize versus distribute, but also whether their existing rack density and cooling strategies can handle the very different thermal and power profiles that inference-heavy AI brings. But there's a nuance here. Government customers are still behind commercial in terms of AI maturity. Another major misconception we see is the belief that if you're doing AI, you need a giant AI factory. Well, that's basically like saying as a first-time home buyer that you want a $2 million mansion. The reality is that federal budgets, continuing resolutions, and these risk-averse cultures don't allow for jumping straight to mega AI data center buildouts. Frankly, even if they wanted to, it's structurally impossible. For the federal government to have a brand new AI-ready data center today, someone would have had to request the budget 9 years ago and started the design 7 years ago. AI wasn't even on the radar then in the way that it is now. And so that's why early federal AI work is happening on a much smaller, more practical scale. Instead of these giant 800 rack AI clusters, agencies are standing up 3 to 5 rack test beds just to understand what their workloads look like and what their infrastructure can actually handle.
When agencies are evaluating AI workloads, what tends to tip the scale between keeping something in the cloud versus bringing it on premises?
In a word, security. Even when AI is the priority, security requirements override performance, speed, or cost in most decisions. That's why cloud is often viewed as a dirty word, not because of capability, but because of classification, that mission sensitivity, and zero trust constraints. And we're seeing a similar pattern in higher education, especially within those HPC environments, where sensitive research data sets and tightly coupled jobs often keep those AI workloads on premises for performance and control. Meanwhile, lighter inference work, things like tutoring agents or chatbots for student services, can run in departments or in the cloud when it makes sense.
For partners listening to this, what are some signals in customer conversations that suggest it may be time to rethink the rack and power layer?
When customers say they're experimenting with AI, but don't know what that means yet. If a customer can't articulate what doing AI means for their mission, that's a sign they're about to underestimate what the physical layer really needs. And this is where solution providers help reset expectations and become integral to guiding customers on how to scale responsibly. AI has effectively blown up the old model where networking, storage, and facilities worked in silos. Now you need OEMs, cloud providers, and integrators working together to deliver those end-to-end solutions. So solution providers really become that connective tissue, helping customers map out what the workload requires, translating that into a realistic physical design, and pulling it all together. So at the end of the day, the solution providers who catch these signals early aren't just selling infrastructure, they're shaping the customer's entire AI trajectory before costly mistakes get made.
If certain workloads need to live closer to the data, that is not just a strategy conversation. It is a physical infrastructure conversation. Adam, let's talk about what that means inside the environment. When AI inference moves on premises in a public sector environment, what typically shifts first inside the rack and power setup?
Well, the first thing that's changed, as you already heard from Niki, is that this is not a nice to have situation, is it? This is to stay competitive, and this is to advance technology as a differentiator, as a country and as a society. So it's coming, I guess, is the first thing that one has to I guess take into consideration. But your question is more about the nuts and bolts of what's changing when we go to this kind of rack infrastructure, this kind of overall physical setup. And look, the very first thing that really is changing is the cost and the value of what is going into a rack now. It's unbelievable how much more expensive this equipment is than anything we've ever racked and stacked before. We're talking millions of dollars of equipment. That's completely different than anything that we've ever known before. And, I think of it sometimes like this is now holding the whole compute. It's almost like the tower 20 years ago, right? Just had the CPU in it, and we were buying, towers, and we were excited with our new gateway computer. And now we're talking about an entire rack full of equipment. It's a totally different story on the value. But, if we get down to the nuts and bolts of the physical infrastructure, the very first thing is weight. This is a much, much heavier equation by the very nature of AI compute, and the density of the equipment that's in there and the weight of the cooling mechanism in the form of liquid. You're talking a much, much heavier rack infrastructure. And to put it into something maybe tangible, The next time you get into an elevator, look up in the corner of the elevator and see what the capacity is. It often says 3,500 pounds or 21 people. That's the rack capacity that we now have in our high strength rack, 3,500 pounds of dynamic meaning moving load. So it's like cramming 21 people in an elevator inside this rack. So weight is a biggie. Another is the sheer size. They're wider, they're deeper, they're taller. The ramp on which you get these things into place all has to be different. The weight distribution on the floor, different. Certainly a big part of that is they're hotter. They're running a lot hotter. And so liquid is the only way to physically control. You will have air and liquid, but in high density clusters, you'll have liquid. And to carry, buckets of liquid, again, trying to put it into a tangible feel, imagine picking up buckets and buckets of liquid and how heavy that is. So the heat is another piece. And then just surely more power. We're playing around with a lot of different ways to distribute power into these environments. That means playing with the voltage, playing with the amperage, playing with the way that the rack power distribution lands within the rack and the infrastructure above, below, and beside these very vital racks. So how else can I say it? It's all different. It's very, very different.
Schneider has a broad data center and IT infrastructure portfolio. When a partner approaches modernization, how should they think about bringing those pieces together in a way that feels cohesive and scalable?
Thanks for that question. Niki answered it in a similar way to what I'll say is that this is not the way you used to think about infrastructure. The infrastructure was a late stage consideration. It would be there. You'd have power, you'd have the right floor, you'd have the right ability to go buy a rack or to go buy some rack PDUs and maybe even bring in, a little bit different cooling in the form of, say, a close coupled cooling, bring that in beside it. You could think of these things later in the planning cycle. Now you can't for two reasons. One is that you may not have the right setup at all. And secondly is that what you're going to put in there is probably going to include some engineering. And it may even mean that you have to come up with something custom or somewhat customized. There are different stages and layers of customizing something. Most people don't like it in IT because it just sounds like it's going to be a lot of work. But the point is, your environment may require something very different than what you have in there now. So you just can't wait till the end and say, go get me this rack or go get me this rack PDU and be fine. So one thing is that you absolutely have to start sooner. In our experience, we feel pretty good about where Schneider sits right now. We have an extensive portfolio. I couldn't really have said that to you, Sydney, a year and a half ago, but we have the high strength racks and we have the high amperage PDUs. We have the ability to bring in the right cooling of air mixed with liquid or pure liquid. We also have a whole range of compliant offers that work really well in the federal and public sector space. That is for purchasing behaviors. We have the right partners. We start all the way back at the chip manufacturers, the server manufacturers. We work with a whole host of channel partners, like the ones who are listening here, who want to really get into and be integrators for their customers. So there's a number of things that you need to think about, and Schneider feels like it's really in that best position that it's been in so far as this AI wave goes.
Let's focus on federal for a moment. When TAA and BAA requirements come into play, how do they shape modernization decisions? And what should channel partners know about Schneider's portfolio to help support their customers?
Yeah, in the case of working with public sector, I think I divide it into two modes. One is the technical design mode, and the other is the procurement mode. So there's coming up with the right expertise for the sake of design. And then there is the, how do I execute this in terms of a go buy it and have it delivered. Customers in this space want to work with a company, a partner who knows the space, understands the nuances of designing unique solutions that we just got through talking about a little of those nuances now and that capability for custom, but also fully understands how purchasing and procurement and execution and delivery are all going to work. It can be very much a different story when we're working with public sector versus almost any other market or industry that I can think of. And in terms of just understanding a little bit where Schneider stands on this, we have, in the case of our small system UPSs, which is the legacy story between where APC fits in as a brand within Schneider. Within that small system UPS, we have the largest portfolio of TAA compliant small system UPSs in the industry. We have the largest portfolio. In fact, there's many of our small system UPSs for which there's no equivalent by any competitor that can say they also have a TAA compliance. That extends also into our rack power distribution, our racking equipment, even our physical security in the brand of NetBots. All of these are moving towards, or already have moved to, TAA compliance. We're also adding more layers of cybersecurity for different protocols and different expectations of our customers most concerned with that. And what I would say is, as it goes for companies that are manufacturing in the US, we are also moving very, very heavily into that direction as well.
We've talked about what is driving modernization and how to support it from an infrastructure standpoint. Now let's bring this back to the partner opportunity. Niki, when partners lead rack and power modernization conversations tied to AI, how does that expand what they can do for a customer?
Yeah, well, AI is moving so fast that most organizations are caught between the pressure to be early adopters and the realities of slower institutional decision cycles. So what they really need is a partner who isn't just selling hardware, but someone who can see where the technology is going and translate that into the right physical infrastructure decisions. As we've talked about, the power, the cooling, and density have become core parts of the tech stack. So when solution providers can guide customers through those choices and design environments that stay flexible as AI evolves, they stop being a vendor and start being a strategic advisor. And that's what expands their role, helping customers build infrastructure that can adapt, scale, and support whatever tomorrow brings.
In competitive federal and SLED bids, how can a channel partner differentiate themselves now, knowing what's coming with AI inference and the role domestic product sourcing plays in the customer experience?
Yeah, I would call it maturity modeling of your customers. Niki said it. No one is escaping the need to understand how AI is going to apply to their enterprise. The public sector space is no different. And so how does a partner act? And a partner is someone that you can turn to and show your cards and say, I need help here because we are experiencing this need and I need to know what to do about it. And that maturity scale, like a spectrum, could be from really early understanding to very much someone who has tuned into what it is they want to do, and now they are fine tuning. We've discussed already on this story, on this call, on this webinar, is that there are different means of doing that. There is cloud for early use cases, and to Niki's point earlier, it may be something you can't use, but if you can, if that customer can, it's a great place to work out early use cases. You can move to a pay-per-use model, which is a little bit more intense usage, but as you can tell by the name, you're not holding up space in cloud. We call this tuning and fine-tuning of AI use case models. When it gets to DevOps or IP as a protection for a differentiation of a business model, or for the sake of, again, security and privacy, now you are talking about on-premise. So all of these things indicate what I'm calling sort of this spectrum in the maturity model. And as I said before, there's there's principles of design, and then there's principles of procurement and execution. So you were also talking about choosing partnerships, be it a partner choosing a vendor or an end user choosing a system integrator or a reseller. They're going to be looking for who knows how this space works, who can help me navigate compliance and different expectations as it relates to procuring and executing.
If you were advising a solution provider on how to open this conversation, what is a smart first question to ask?
I would ask the question, what are you doing to prepare for the impact AI is going to have on your physical infrastructure? It's not a closed-ended question. It's not, are you thinking about what you're going to do when you start? It's, what are you doing to prepare for this? And that will open up an understanding and a question about, hey, is this something I really need to think of? I'll give you one little quick analogy. You think of a country road and maybe it's a small little narrow country road and it's upkept okay. And imagine tomorrow they say, you know what, this is going to be a major thoroughfare for 18-wheelers hauling massive, truckers are going to roll through here. That would be the question you'd ask, right? Are you ready for this physical infrastructure that it's going to take to uphold this? That's how I think of it in an analogy around how AI has an effect on the physical infrastructure, power, cooling, weight, all the things we talked about to make sure that these end users are ready.
I'll jump in here, and I'm going to flip this question on its head to what partners should be asking themselves. Similar to that thread that Adam was pulling on, what assessments, including power and cooling infrastructure, are you currently running for your customers to prepare for their AI workload deployment? Because customers often don't have that expertise built into their staff, and they need help. So you as a solution provider should be that expert. And you're likely already doing network and storage assessments, so why not add power and cooling?
Why is Schneider Electric a good partner for channels positioned in the federal and public sector space? Niki, I'll start with you.
How much time do we have? Yeah. No. In all seriousness, our dedicated federal and public sector teams bring a level of breadth and depth and real industry experience that's unmatched. Many of them are veterans or have over 20 years supporting federal and public sector customers. So partners get people who truly understand how buyers think, operate, and make decisions. We also have a very large U.S. manufacturing footprint, and as Adam was mentioning earlier, the broadest portfolio of domestic preferent compliance solutions in the market. Behind all of that is also the strength of our government relations team, who are deeply connected in DC. So collectively, that presence, that insight really helps our partners see around those corners and pursue the projects that matter the most.
I would say it this way too. The federal space is so unique. It's so special in that it's the only, if you will, customer and market that we all participate in. We all pay taxes and we all receive the services and the benefits of what we pay for that. And so we're all a customer, right? And at the same time, there's not a real equation here, but we at Schneider and the channel partners on this call are all working in a way to support that. And so we appreciate that. And that's why, among other things, we have this dedication to being a really good partner in this space. And we're thankful to have partners listen and participate with us and work with us as we try to tackle these things for the public sector.
AI adoption is not slowing down anytime soon, and infrastructure readiness will define what comes next. Niki and Adam, thank you both for the insight today.
Thanks for having us.
To learn more about Schneider Electric's secure power portfolio, scan the QR code right there on your screen. For the Channel Company, I'm Sydney Neely.